Okay. Good afternoon. I think we're just about there, aren't we? So my name's Emma Wright. I'm Director of Information and Business Intelligence at the Northern Care Alliance NHS Group. So that's an organisation which covers Salford Royal as a GDE and Pennine Acute as a fast follower. The more eagle-eyed amongst you will spot that I have a little starfish above the I in my surname. I'm involved in a project called the Starfish Project, which supports people who stammer like myself. So that's there to remind me to let you know, because that helps me with my fluency, bizarrely enough. All stammerers have challenging words, and they sort of drop in and out of your vocabulary at random times. At the moment, my challenge is the word data. So talking about data science is absolutely fantastic for me at this moment in time. Anyway, we'll get on with the presentation. So I'm going to talk to you about the data science journey that we've started at Salford Royal, why we've chosen to go down the data science route, how we went about recruiting a small team, a couple of examples of the work that the data science team have been doing, some of the challenges, and what our next steps are. So why did we go down the data science route? So almost 2 years ago now, as part of my own professional development, I decided to do a postgraduate certificate in health data science. So I was trying to get something that was sort of bring me up to speed in terms of analytics. I've been in analytics for over 20 years. And so I went down this route. I signed up to a course. I got to my first lecture a little bit late and rushed in, sat down, and this flip chart here was what greeted me. And at that point I thought, God, I really hope I'm in the wrong place here. I wasn't. It was a challenging course. It was a journey for me, certainly. Really sort of brought me up to speed with what we could do with the data within healthcare, within our healthcare systems. Somebody had to wrestle Excel out of my grubby mitts and move me over to R, which is a open source, completely free statistical package, which is what all my assignments were in. So to say that R and I had a bit of a challenging relationship would be an understatement, as I sat there generally at 10 o'clock on a Friday night going, I could do this in 2 seconds in Excel and I can't do it in R. So, but it opened my eyes to a lot of different opportunities. So, and it wasn't all bad, and I did eventually pass the course in the end. So around the same time was the announcement of the GDE programme, and Salford was fortunate enough to be one of those exemplar sites. So there was a lot of talk about new technologies and all this amazing kit that we could get and fabulous software, and it was very much, ooh, shiny. But like in that middle sentence there, it does mention information. So I was thinking, well, okay, so what's my exemplary analytics to go along with all the exemplary technology that we've got? So we'd had our allocation, so I thought I'm going to try and get some resource so we can set up a data science team to explore some of the stuff and the concepts that I'd undertaken as part of my course. It did feel a bit like this. So in terms of trying to get access into that fund, we did get our funding agreed, and now I'm going to give you an example of a really terrible piece of analytics, which is a 2-point pie chart, which shows you the amount of the allocation that we got for our data science team. But it was a small team. We've done great stuff with it. So we set out on our recruitment journey. Any of you who work within technologies and analytics within the NHS know that recruitment is a challenge. So we devised our job description, our person spec, On the night before that we were holding the interviews, we did think about whether we should have some sort of technical competency test, and then decided that we probably really wouldn't know what to test them in, and we wouldn't know if it was right or wrong either way. So we shortlisted 8 people, and 8 people turned up for interview, which was staggering for me because we very rarely get that. It was the most interesting day of interviews that I have ever done. We had people from all sorts of different backgrounds. We had an astrophysicist, we had somebody who was working within customer services at Vodafone, analysing their information. It was a really broad spectrum of people. We appointed 3 people from those interviews, and we appointed 1 person internally, and I've got a bit of an embarrassed face there. That's my embarrassed face. So when we were starting to do this recruitment program, my corporate information manager came to me and said, well, you know this data science stuff, what about Robin? And I'm going, what about Robin? So Robin was a lady who sat in the corner of the office, and her job every month was to copy and paste spreadsheets into a PowerPoint presentation. Robin had a first-class degree in applied mathematics. Go and look in your information teams and see what gems you have in there already. So we had a team of 4, and as well as all the fantastic stuff that they did with our data, they also brought a whole new approach to things. So they brought a whole new vocabulary into the team, from survival, modelling, logistical regression, t-tests, p-values. They also had a very much focus on existing research. So we did a piece of work around readmissions. Now, if I'd asked one of my analysts in my information team to go and do a piece of work on readmissions and try to predict readmissions in the future, what they would have done was, first step, pull all the data we have on readmissions. What our data science team do is they go out to the academic journals and they look at what research has already taken place around readmissions and what some of the indicators may be for people coming back into hospital. So that was a really new approach. They like to work as an entire team, and they like to share. So we've had other organisations in, and we're more than happy to share the work that we've done. But that was quite unique to come from a team that were 4 new people all coming together. And they also use a number of tools such as Slack and Asana, so they can share their work between the 4 individuals. And they just added a bit of science to what we do within our analytics teams. So, so we don't all go down a rabbit hole when something looks like it's going off track, and we've got a data scientist who goes, well, I've run this through a blah test, and actually your p-value is this, it's not significant variation, it's just normal variation. And we go, okay. So that's been a really useful approach as well. So as I said, there were 4 individuals, 3 of them completely new to healthcare. So what did we do? Did we sort of ease them in gently into the world of the NHS? No, we found our most wicked problems and we challenged them with those. So the work that they've done looks at unwarranted variation within clinical pathways, patient flow and modelling that, patient deterioration, preventing readmissions, predicting readmissions, risk stratification. So all the stuff that we really wanted to do as an information team but didn't have the capacity and in some case the skills to be able to do that, they're the things that we set them off with. So just to give you a flavour of a couple of the projects that they've worked on. So we have a renal dialysis service at Salford, and we have early warning scores as part of the patient pathway that identifies patients who may go off during their treatment. So we built a model that basically gives us an indication and predicts more accurately than the national early warning scores within the renal service about whether a patient is likely to experience some form of deterioration during the renal dialysis process. So we took a load of different variables and data items from our EPR and we fed these into a model. So we took 2 years and we trained that model to try to predict patients who would be coming in. So when we'd built our model, we then ran 4 months worth of information through it. And this model, so out of over 6,000 visits in terms of the treatments, the model was accurately able to predict 5,939 of the outcomes accurately, which is hugely accurate and really exciting. So this is a relatively recent project, so we're starting to refine that now, and we're continuing to work with the clinical service on how we embed that into the clinical practice. So the other piece of work we've done is around risk stratification within the Salford population and a predictive model that aims to predict patients at risk of admission back into hospital within the next 12 months. So again, we built a prediction model with an algorithm that segments the population into 4 cohorts. So those at very high risk, we have a split in terms of the moderate, which takes us from a 30% risk to a 75%, and then those who are low risk. So we're working with our community teams as part of our integrated care organisation to try and target that moderate in the high segmentation risk. So in terms of the high risk, the chances are the horse is bolted with those patients. So what we're trying to do is put interventions in within the community for that population where we've got a 50 to 75% chance that they'll be admitted within the next 12 months. Again, we used all sorts of different clinical indicators. Within Salford, we're fortunate to have the Salford Integrated Record, which pulls together GP as well as acute care information into a single source. So we had a wide variety of factors and items that we could use as part of this model. So the output of the model looks something like this. So you'll get a list of all of your patients, a little bit around who those patients are, a risk score which puts them into that high, medium, low category and which GP practice they're at. And that's enabled our community services teams to take cohorts of patients and go and have conversations with GPs. And the other upside of that is that we're getting GPs involved in seeing the value of the secondary use of the information within their clinical systems, and particularly within Salford and no doubt in other areas, it's always been a challenge to get GPs to enable you to access information within their systems. So this has just shown them the value of being able to do that as well. And they're also coming back to us to help us refine that model and say, well, I've got this patient here who I'm concerned about, but they aren't in your cohort. So we're looking at the factors that are present for individual patients and seeing whether there are other factors that we need to build into the model to increase its accuracy. So our challenges have been around managing expectations. So it's for people. And we have an expectation, particularly within analytics, within the health service, that we can do things very rapidly. Teams are used to being reactive in terms of what comes in. So if you've sat in an information team, you'll always have had the call that comes through from the trust executive that wants to see A&E trends for the last 3 years by blah, and can we have it this afternoon? And this is a very different approach. So these models take time to build and time to train. That R&D approach is also quite a change in thinking as well. So we're now trying to get across the fact that You know, we can look at something and we can build models, and actually it might not be meaningful, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have done that piece of work. And sometimes failure in terms of the outcome that you were expecting is okay. It's just part of that R&D process. We've been fortunate enough to get quite a lot of clinical engagement for the team as well, and we have a sponsor who looks at any new project that comes in to make sure that there is value in doing the piece of work that has been specified, and there will be a wider value in terms of being able to use that either across the organisation or more widely, and that it isn't just somebody's pet project which will answer a particular question in a particular area. So in terms of understanding and knowledge of some of the concepts as well, that's been challenging. It's been challenging for me, some of the terminology. So we're starting to get people used to thinking about, is it significant, is it statistically significant? And the next probably big part for us is being able to operationalise some of the outputs that come out of this team. So as I said, we've built a readmissions model that has, I think it's like an accuracy rate of about 98%. So it looks when patients come in how likely they are to readmit, which is great, but now what? So what do we do with it now? How do we operationalise that? How do we put that into the hands of our nursing and clinical staff and say, these patients are at high risk of readmission, you need to put some interventions in to make sure that doesn't happen. So in terms of our next steps, as I said, we're keen to work with other organisations. We're happy to share. We'd love to run your data through our models and let you share some of the things that we've found. So we're looking at that wider engagement piece externally and also internally. So a lot of the projects have been quite clinically focused. So we're looking to bring some of the more sort of managerial elements in. So we're looking at being able to predict breaches in terms of cancer pathways, RTT pathways to stop sort of changing the focus. And ultimately we're looking for more wicked problems. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions? Anyone? We could take this conversation to our networking zone if anyone wants to talk to Emma afterwards. We're now on lunch break, but we will be back in an hour's time with more amazing presentations. If you do want to get involved in some blueprinting research that's being done over here, then that would be absolutely fantastic as well. I know they're really keen to hear your thoughts. See you back here in an hour.